Welcome to the False Start Fantasy Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of fantasy football, helping you navigate the ups and downs of the game. I'm your host, Cameron Edgecombe, and today I'm going to be doing an NFL mock draft, crazy chaos draft. So you might be asking yourself, what is a chaos draft in the NFL? Well, it kind of looks like this. For every pick that we're going to be making, we're going to be spinning this wheel. We're going to hope that it lands on exactly what I want, my choice every time. But most likely it's not going to, and we're going to get a little crazy to it. So, going to go ahead and jump right on in. Bears have the first overall pick. Everyone says it's going to be Caleb Williams. We're going to see how that turns out. Now, there's a number of different choices here on this wheel that we're going to be spinning, but as we get into it, I'll explain as we go. And isn't that great? My choice is the first option that shows up. So we're going to be taking Caleb Williams at first overall. As expected by everyone, no need to get crazy. I'm already upset. Okay, slight reach. Might have to go ahead and restart this. As many people are saying, the draft really starts at 3 because Drake May and Caleb Williams are obviously the consensus 101 and 102. But I think there is some real talk about what is the value of Drake May. You know, he is not the perfect prospect, though I do think he is a tier above what we've seen before, and I would put him above everyone but C.J. Stroud in the last 2 years. If we're going to be going for a slight risk or slight reach, I'm not taking Jaden Daniels. I would consider that a major reach, so I'm going to be taking Marvin Harrison Jr. And we're going to go ahead and spin for the next pick, where we have the New England Patriots. And once again, we're going to be getting a slight reach. And I like this a lot because there's so many options that the Patriots could go. I think that picking Jaden Daniels would be a mistake in most drafts, and obviously picking Drake May would be the right choice for the team. But we're going for a chaos draft. Who cares what the right choice is? We're going to be going for a slight reach and taking the wide receiver 2 in the draft, Malik Neighbors. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel again. Already 2 big surprises at picks 2 and 3, and then we're going to be trading pick 4 from the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to be trading this pick for a player. Now, the way that trading works here in the Pro Football Network trade is that you can't exactly trade for players. That wouldn't really make sense. So instead, we're going to be picking a team to be trading with. Now, if the Cardinals are going to be trading pick 4, they're going to need to be getting a very good player. We know that T. Higgins and guys like DeAndre Hopkins are probably on the trading block. These guys are probably available, but you wouldn't trade the 4th overall pick for guys like this. You would need to get somebody who can go out there and be an absolute beast for your team. And I think that there is someone I have in mind for that. So we're going to be trading pick 4 for Jacksonville's Josh Allen, but they're also going to need to add in their 2nd round pick. Now, because this is a mock draft and on Pro Football Network, I have to balance this out by adding in a few other pieces. Ignore those other pieces. We're going to say a 2nd round pick and Josh Allen, the outside linebacker for the Jaguars, is what they need to trade up to pick 4. And it doesn't make sense with Drake May still on the board, but we're going to be grabbing Joe Alt. He's the most guaranteed bona fide franchise tackle in this draft. So we're going to be taking him at 4th overall, and we're going to be spinning the wheel. I like this a lot. The Jaguars did a lot of things to shore up their offensive line this offseason. Re-sign some of the good players like Gosam Lamed, and they're going to be taking Joe Alt to, hopefully finish out this offensive line and take it to what Trevor Lawrence needs. Now, trade down for the Los Angeles Chargers, I don't think is going to surprise anyone. The top guys on the board here are Drake May and probably Jaden Daniels, as well as Rome Odunze. but I think with Drake May there's one team that just immediately comes to mind to everybody. And since I don't have to trade for a player this time, we're going to go for the Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota Vikings are going to be trading up with the Los Angeles Chargers. They're going to be taking both of their first round picks, and I think it would take at least, we're only doing a first round mock draft, so I'm going to go ahead and just say that it's going to be the first two firsts and a second. Who knows what it would actually be, but that would be enough to get this guaranteed, and they're going to be taking Drake May at 5, and I think they would be absolutely thrilled to get a player like that. Go Vikings. All right. Spinning here, and I think this is a dream scenario for the New York Giants. But it's a chaos draft, which means they're trading out of the 6th pick. They're not taking Rome Odunze. They're not taking Fashanu. They're not taking a quarterback. They're going to be trading this pick for a player that they want instead. And that is tough to imagine for quite a few reasons. But let's go ahead and think about this. So, Giants desperately need offensive line, receivers. They really need running back. They need quarterback. They need everything on the offense. And they've got a pretty good defense, though it could use some help as well. So, if we're looking at players who might be available on offense, we've got pretty poor selection. I think that while the Giants do have some money, once they let the Daniel Jones contract go away, they're not exactly what we would want to see coming from an offense that is going to need to pay for some people next year. So we're going to go ahead and do a trade like this. The New York Giants are going to trade their 6th overall pick for the 49ers' 31st overall pick. It would probably be their 2nd next year in Brandon Ayuk. And I don't know if that's going to be enough, so I'm going to add the 2nd in. And yeah, I was afraid of that. Got rejected. That's all right. We can just increase the value. So back here, 49ers, 6, 31, 1st, 2nd. They're just not liking the trade. We're just going to add a whole bunch of different options just to make sure this thing goes through this time. There we go. Trade has been accepted by paying a ton of money. Now, 49ers could go Jaden Daniels. They're one of the teams that I think actually could use his rushing ability to the maximum level. But what would interest me more is grabbing Rome Odunze or Laiatu Latu. I think that Latu is a top 10 player in this draft. He's a fantastic edge rusher with a ton of tools, and I think on a team like the 49ers where he doesn't need to be the main guy, he could be a 10-plus sack guy, which is pretty crazy for a number 2 option on a team. And I think that's what we're going to go ahead with. So Giants traded the 6th overall pick to the 49ers, who traded up to get Laiatu Latu, trading away Brandon Ayuk and mortgaging the future. And the Giants now have a number 1 wide receiver. All right, Tennessee Titans are going to be trading down, and I think that makes sense for what we see here, and it doesn't need to be actually that far. I think that teams like the Broncos and the Raiders are absolutely going to be wanting to trade up, but I think the Broncos just have a little bit more that they can give up to trade to this spot. So 7, 12, 1st next year, I think we'll easily get it done. It did not. That's okay. We're going to try again. Denver Broncos, Tennessee Titans. I'm just going to start overpaying every single time. Ignore what the actual trade values are. Broncos are going to be getting Jaden Daniels. And while I don't love the fit, I don't think Jaden Daniels is a franchise quarterback day 1 on the team. I do trust Sean Payton to mold him into the quarterback he needs to be. And we've got a slight reach here at pick number 8, which I think makes sense. There's a lot of great players here. Brock Bowers and Roma Dunze would probably be the number 1 and 2 on most teams' board. Fashanu is, of course, a great tackle as well. But I think that the Cardinals are going to be needing to look at that defensive line, and Dallas Turner is my number 1 edge rusher, or number 2 edge rusher in this draft, so I think they're going to be happy with that. Which puts us next to the Bears. They obviously made a ton of free agency moves this year and are going to be looking for another trade in this draft. They already have pick 9 from themselves, pick 1 from the Panthers. They traded for Keenan Allen as well as many other players, and now they're going to be trading down from pick 9. It makes more sense than I think most people would realize. Jets might say, okay, we only like 1 tackle where the Bears like 2. Let's just go ahead and give a 3rd round pick, though we're going to make this a 1st and a 2nd just to make sure it goes through. Jets might say, we only like Fashanu, and the Bears might say, well, we like Mims, we like Fuaga, we like Fontenot, we like Morgan. They're okay with trading back a pick. And then we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel for them again. Alright, at ADP we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This is the first time we've gotten this, so I have the NFL mock draft database here open on another tab. We're going to scroll down and we can see that Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Harrison May, Daniels, Caleb, these guys have all been taken, but number 1 on the board who has not been taken is Roma Dunze. I think the Bears will be adding here to be their number 3 option going into this year, meaning they're probably not going to be signing Keenan Allen again. Alright, let's go ahead and spin the wheel. And we get an awesome one here. So Screw a Rival is one that I came up with. So Chargers know that they are 2 picks away from the Raiders, and the Raiders are needing a quarterback. That is their biggest need going into this draft. They, of course, need offensive line and probably some corner help and a whole bunch of other things, but the number 1 thing they're going to be needing is a quarterback, and J.J. McCarthy is available. But McCarthy is not a guy that you could start day 1, so they're going to be trading with a team that does not need to start him day 1, and that's the New Orleans Saints. So New Orleans Saints are going to trade up from 14 overall so that they can... Not a fan of this trade and getting rejected, but Los Angeles Chargers, 14, 1st, 11, 2nd, 3rd, whatever. And the trade has been accepted. Saints trade up to 11 so they can draft J.J. McCarthy to be their quarterback of the future and will be a backup to Derek Carr for now. And that absolutely screws over the Raiders who wanted him at 13. Alright, next pick is going to be ADP. We'll be looking at the consensus mock board. And I think very obviously it's Jared Verse. He's not a player that I think should be a top 15 selection, definitely not a top 12 selection, but teams think differently than I do, and that's okay that they take Jared Verse. I do think he'll be a positive starter in the NFL. Tennessee Titans, their defensive line was getting pretty old. I don't think that's the worst pick. Alright, another one that is first time coming up here on the board is a backup starter for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, of course, you could go, scroll way down here to the quarterbacks and find Bo Nix, or you could find Michael Penix Jr.'s guys that will be backing up a quarterback after the draft this year in 2024. But one that kind of interests me a little bit more is Brock Bowers. Last year they spent a first round pick on Michael Mayer. It was a later first round pick, but I don't think it's the worst idea to get a fantastic weapon here in Brock Bowers. And he is technically a backup day 1, because he's going to be backing up Michael Mayer while he learns for a year. Now, what he will eventually become in the back half of his first season and what he becomes in 2025 is a completely different scenario, but that's what we're looking at right now. All right, trading for a player. Now, the Chargers, I believe, have traded back twice now, and now they're just going to go ahead and trade this pick entirely. They know they need offensive line, and while there's tons of guys, they just don't have any of them graded as a first round, pick 14 draft pick. So instead, they're going to be looking at other teams and seeing what is available to them. So definitely a lot of options here, but I think the one that makes the most sense to me I think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. Um, Bills have seen that there is a number of players here that could replace Tre'Davious White. They have some draft capital, and they have a certain player that I would like on the Chargers, and that's Dion Dawkins. He's a left tackle. They would have to include their 28 pick and probably first out next year. But this would go ahead and let them select their corner of choice. And while I'm sure there's a number of Bills fans here saying, you know, this is a steal, we're going to getting, pick 14 for just a older left tackle, and probably doesn't make any sense since he just got paid. But they got to be looking towards the future, and they got to be looking for how do we shut down the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is definitely a goal of the Bills. So trading up here, they're going to be taking my corner number 1 prospect, which of course is Nate Wiggins from Clemson. Just love how that guy shows up on tape. Fantastic player at locking down for last probably 3 years at Clemson. Really good player there. They're going to be replacing Tre'Davious White with Nate Wiggins, and while they're going to be, of course, sad to give up Dion Dawkins, it does give them a ton of options for the future. And we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel. Is it going to be? It's a big reach. All right. No explanation necessary for this. Colts are going to be doing a big reach, and while they absolutely need offensive line help, they absolutely need corner help, and maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is the receiver that you would hope they want to go. You got to reach even further than that. This is a big reach. You got to go way down here, and they're looking at guys that they think can absolutely be difference makers on the Indianapolis Colts, and it's the guy who I have graded as the wide receiver 5 in this draft. It's going to be Xavier Worthy, a guy who was a borderline first-round pick coming out of Texas, wide receiver. They want the speed. They are intrigued by how fast he can go in pajamas, and he is going to be fantastic out there on the Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson's cannon of an arm. All right, ADP for the Seahawks here, I think makes a lot of sense. They have needs in every single place you can imagine. Well, I don't love this. Bo Nix is number 1 here on ADP. I don't hate the fit as much as I thought. Bo Nix is a guy who made a ton of production off of screens and short, not complicated passes at Oregon. I do not have a first round grade here, but I said ADP would be the pick, and ADP is going to be the pick. So Bo Nix, congratulations, you're a Seahawk, and I hope it works out for you, because that is would have been a dream scenario under Pete Carroll, but you don't have Pete Carroll anymore. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars have already made a huge trade in this draft to go ahead and get Joe Alt. They're going to be making another trade here. This time they're going to be trading down. And I think there's quite a few reasons why that could be. So the biggest reason is Fuaga, Fataneo, and Amarius Mims, J.C. Latham, if you'd rather. Whoever your number 1 offensive tackle is in this draft, or sorry, number 3 offensive tackle, as we've already gone Fashionow and Joe Alt. I think that there's quite a few teams that could be interested in trading up to get their guy. And the team that pops out to me first is the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw last year how bad the left tackle position was, and they still have a ton of money that they could go and pick this, go and get a guy for instead of trading up in the draft. But I think that there's a number of tackles here that could be the best choice for them. And I think I'm going to be going with J.C. Latham. If you have Mims or if you have Fawaga, that's fine. I think Fawaga is a right tackle, so he wouldn't really make sense for the Chiefs as they already have Jawan Taylor there. So you'd be wanting a left tackle, so you'd be looking at Mims or Latham. So I'll be taking Latham from University of Alabama. And we'll be moving on to the next pick. This is tough. Bengals would love to be getting an offensive tackle or a corner here, and it makes absolutely no sense that they would not be picking one of these guys or picking Brian Thomas Jr. I know that he didn't play with, you know, Joe Burrow, but he is an LSU guy, and maybe it makes sense to them. So they're going to be trading this pick, and I don't know how many players are left out there that are available for a trade. So I need to think about, who is available and who do they want in this system. And I think there's someone who makes sense to me. We're going to be going with the Dallas Cowboys, Cincinnati Bengals. There's a ton of corners here, and the Cowboys have decided that they like the corners here. Remember, ignore the actual picks here. I'm just trying to get this approved. The Dallas Cowboys, they like the corners here, and they're really worried about having to pay Trevon Diggs long term. Whereas the Bengals are saying we need to win right now, and we need more turnovers on that defense. So we're going to be going and trading Trevon Diggs and maybe a second round next year, whatever the pick ends up being. And the Cowboys are going to go ahead and trade up to be getting Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. Or should I go Quinyon Mitchell? Oh, this is tough. Coolin McKinstry, of course, is another great player. I think he doesn't fit. I mean, who knows what the new corner mold is for the team. I'm going to be going Terrion Arnold. I think he's the number one on draft boards right now, so number one guy that's still available. And I think he's just going to make sense in this team. All right. Picker wheel. Next up is a big reach here for the Los Angeles Rams, and I think that makes sense. There's a ton of players that you do like, but the guy that I have number one for the Los Angeles Rams, the guy I keep picking in my normal mock drafts, is going to be the defensive tackle out of Texas. I don't know why. Am I crazy? Why does Byron Murphy say he's out of Iowa? Okay, this is the guy I was thinking of. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Iowa. In this mock draft simulator, he's a defensive tackle too, so I think that counts as a big reach. But Byron Murphy is an absolute beast at defensive tackle, and the Rams are going to be looking to fill someone like Aaron Donald's shoes. Now, obviously, he's not going to go in and be able to do that, but nobody's going to be able to do that. But I do think he's going to be able to be a guy who can rush the passer as well as be a stout run defender on the team. So. All right. Backup starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers is pretty tough to do. They drafted an offensive tackle last year as well as a number one corner in Joey Porter Jr. They really need defensive line help and offensive line help, and I think that actually makes it okay. Cam Hayward is there for another year, and while they do run a 4-3 defense and would probably be starting, Johnny Javarius Newton or Jershawn Newton day one with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think it's okay to call him a day one backup for the team. And maybe you hope by the end of his first year, he can go ahead and jump in there and be a positive starter for the team, which puts the Miami Dolphins next up on the block. Best fantasy player for the Miami Dolphins just makes no sense. I mean, we already have Bo Nix QB5 in this draft going off the board, and Tua is a better quarterback than everyone but the top two guys in this draft. So it's not great to see that you have to go a uh, best fantasy player in this draft. And Brian Thomas Jr. is the guy that I would have instantly in mind. He's my wide receiver 4. But the problem is that they just don't need a receiver and they don't need a running back. But we are forced to take one anyways. So we're going to be taking Brian Thomas Jr. to the Miami Dolphins. Maybe they're saying we're not committing to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle after their contracts expire. And that's the idea there. Who knows? And I'm pumped. This is exactly what I wanted from the Philadelphia Eagles. A big reach is exactly what Howie Roseman will have in mind. And Jackson Powers Johnson may be the perfect fit. He is quite possibly the best center prospect we've seen in college football. He's an absolute beast. Whatever team ends up picking him in the first round will be very happy with him. I think that is a fantastic pick by the Eagles, but it's not going to be the guy that I pick, and it's going to be a cornerback who, as I've watched him a little bit more, I've started to get more and more interested. So Kamari Lassiter is a very physical player. You can see these screens that develop, wide receiver screens as they develop on the outside, and he just will go in and blow the play up. Now, when you look at his statistics, you'll see 0 interceptions. I don't think the Eagles are caring about that. They're not looking for a break, don't bend, kind of defense where you got to get these turnovers, you got to get the plays that win the game. They've got a fantastic defensive line. Let them do that. Defensive backs, hold your ground. And I think Kamari Lassiter is the kind of guy who could do that. I call that a big reach. They had him as 47 right here. I don't know what PFF has, Kamari Lassiter graded as, but I can't imagine it's a first round pick. Just pulled it up here. Yep, he's 38 overall on their big board, and I think he's going to be a first round pick. And I think the Eagles are going to be extremely happy if they get a player like that. All right, back-to-back big reaches here. And corner is an absolute need, for the Chargers. There's a couple of great guys here. Even offensive tackle isn't something I would be opposed to them getting. I can't call Jackson Powers Johnson, though he would be a great player for them, a big reach. And Chop Robinson kind of does already what Joey Bosa does, so I wouldn't be very excited about that. So we're going to go ahead and reach on my number 6 wide receiver in the draft, and that's Adonai Mitchell. Justin Herbert's got to throw to someone. I think it's very risky to pick 2 prospect receivers in back-to-back drafts. Mitchell didn't have the greatest college production. He wasn't targeted that much. He wasn't, the number 1 guy on this offense. Xavier Worthy was. And as, and really he was the number 2 guy because the run game was a much bigger focus for Texas. And maybe that's because they played in the Big 12 where they could run over guys, but Adonai Mitchell is definitely a prospect guy, but when you watch him, you can see exactly what makes him different than Quentin Johnston and that he actually can go up and catch the ball. All right, ADP here for the Cincinnati Bengals I think makes a lot of sense. We're going to go ahead and scroll over here to the NFL mock draft database. Fashanu is taken. I believe Arnold is taken. And Fontenot is a fantastic pick. Let me just go ahead and make sure there's no one else that I'm forgetting. We drafted, yep, Arnold went ahead and traded up for him. So we're going to be taking Fontenot from the Washington Huskies. He was a fantastic player on that offensive line this year, and I even see him high as offensive tackle 2 in a couple rankings. I know that Dan Fornick from Player Profiler has him really highly rated. Even has him above guys like J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims, who are very toolsy guys and have been mocked in the top 15 picks. So Fontenot is a really good player, and I think would be very good for the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, in pure pass protection, but also as a run blocker. All right, so we're going to be going ahead and trading down with this pick, and that's kind of tough. Green Bay Packers, they really need, a corner. I keep saying that, and they could really use offensive line help, but instead they're going to be trading down, and I have done so many trades that I've run out of players in mind for who they should be trading for. So I have an idea with this one. So Green Bay would be trading their first round pick this year as well as next year. Well, first round and probably a third round pick or whatever next year, and getting back the Giants' 31st pick, as well as offensive tackle Evan Neal. I don't think he has been working out for the Giants, but the thing about the Green Bay Packers is that they have a different style of coaching their offensive tackles. They know a little bit differently what they want from their players. So they're going to be teaching Evan Neal exactly how to do that in a completely different style. So 31st, 2 first round picks, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. Why does this keep getting rejected? Am I doing something wrong? Their next 5 picks in this draft, as well as their next 4 picks. It's not happening. They're not trading down. It will not let me. It refuses. So we're just going to spin the wheel instead. They're not letting me. We're just going to go with a big reach instead. And I think we got to scroll way down. We know that they love their receiver room. Graham Barton played offensive tackle at Duke and is the kind of guy that you could move across the line as you would want to do that. And he's exactly who I have in mind for the Green Bay Packers. And it's exactly what I was saying with why they were trading for Evan Neal from the Giants. They like to coach their guys to play multiple positions and not so much that they specialize on, playing multiple positions. But think of a guy like Elton Jenkins. He's a guy who's been a long time Packer. And it's because, he plays guard primarily, but every now and then they need to kick him out to offensive tackle. He does a great job at that. And I think Graham Barton's exactly that kind of prospect. You can put him at left guard right away, but if you need him at tackle, he can go ahead and jump in there at tackle. And I think that's going to be really valuable and exactly what the Green Bay Packers are going to be wanting from an offensive lineman this year. All right, just a few picks left. We're going to go ahead and try to trade down with the Buccaneers. as I've said before, I already don't know what players they're going to be trading for. Let's go ahead and pretend that Derek Stingley is the guy that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trading for. This website just does not want me to trade anymore. It just doesn't like it. Derek Stingley is a guy who was a man coverage corner coming out of um, shoot, not Alabama. Where did Stingley come from? LSU. Thank you. It's just not letting me pick him. I think it's sick of my trading down. It says it's just not making sense anymore. So we're gonna spin the wheel instead and get screw a rival. That's a more fun option anyways. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's no rivals in the next few picks for them. Uh, Being an NFC South, all of their rivals are picking way higher up here and have even traded up or traded away um, value so that they can get their guys. But there is one team that isn't being shown here, and that's at pick 33. Normally, I would have screw a rival, mean you trade your pick, and maybe if they're really focused on that, they would trade to pick 32 so that they could pick a guy ahead of the Carolina Panthers, but they're not being shown here. But Carolina Panthers, they're going to be looking at a receiver, and I think Ladd McConkey is exactly the kind of guy they're going to be looking for. They're going to want him to learn from Adam Thielen, to learn how to be that route runner, to learn how to get open and be the guy. And I think that's what Ladd can do. So they're going to go ahead and pick him now, so the Panthers can't have him. And we're lucky. We get an ADP pick. There's so many great players here on the board that it's just kind of upsetting to see a guy like Talisi Fuaga and Quinyon Mitchell and Amarius Mims and even Jackson Powers Johnson and Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry. See these guys go all the way down here at 27 is absolutely shocking. So an ADP pick makes a lot of sense. I'm sure it's going to be Fuaga. Perhaps I'm wrong. Is Fuaga going higher? He is. Ooh, I picked Fotson now, and it should have been Fuaga. My bad, guys. We're going to pick him here at right tackle for the Cardinals anyways. I think that makes more sense since they picked offensive tackle last year. So they're going to have to have 2 first-round picks at left tackle and right tackle to ground that offensive line for Kyler Murray. Guys, it's not happening. I can't trade for a player. We might have to remove these. And with less options, we do get ADP. Finally, the Chargers have traded down several times. Last time they picked Adonai Mitchell way ahead of ADP, so now they're going to be picking a guy who does make sense at ADP. Jackson Powers Johnson, I'm making sure that there are no corners or any other players. Nate Wiggins was already picked. Arnold McCarthy Bowers, Jared Verse, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Okay, it's going to be Jackson Powers Johnson, which I think makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. They, Harbaugh's already gone out and said that he is going to be focusing on the offensive line this year. That is the most important position to him, so he's going to be picking the best center prospect at offensive line. And we're going to be getting a slight reach from the Lions. I think that makes a lot of sense with them. Quinyon Mitchell would normally be my guy, but I think they're going to be looking for a guy who has a little bit more surprise in him, and I think Cooper DeJean could be that. He's a very physical guy. I do like what he does when he can actually match up with a guy right at the line and really push him off of his spot, force him out of bounds, or even just jam him right there at the line. And I like what Cooper DeJean can then run with the guy. It's not so much we have to, you know, stop him at the line or else he's getting past us. No, he's got the great athleticism to run with him up the sideline. So I like that. Big reach here for the Baltimore Ravens makes a lot of sense. As long as we have known the GM for the Ravens, they have picked a number of surprising candidates, and I don't think this year will be any different. Amarius Mims would be a fantastic player to replace Morgan Moses on the offensive line, or an, they could go with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Quinyon Mitchell. These are guys that would make a lot of sense. Keon Coleman could shore up the receiver room, though I don't think they really have that big of a problem with it as it is. But the guy I want to see most with them is T'Vondre Sweat. They lost a lot of guys on the defensive line, and Sweat is a guy who could immediately come in and be a great run blocker, as well as probably get about 3-4 sacks in his rookie year. Not someone you're looking for in an IDP league. This, unless you have really high points per tackle, but he is a guy that could fill up a defensive line for the Ravens that has just been eviscerated by free agency. Screw a rival here at pick 31. I'd have to scroll up just to think about who would be the rival they're screwing. So they're screwing over the Commanders. Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin are already there for the Cardinals. Maybe they're looking at running back. They did let Antonio Gibson go. The Giants don't have a running back. Hold on a second. We might be cooking. I'm starting to think this should be a running back pick, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with it. Giants, it makes no sense. You would not be picking Trey Benson. He is not a first round pick caliber player. And neither is Jonathan Brooks, but I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks. They're going to be chasing that upside. They're going to say that, oh, we know we have an insider at the Commanders, and they're saying that the running back position is super important to them. We're going to go ahead and spend 31st pick on Jonathan Brooks and screw over those Commanders who really need a running back. All right, last pick of the draft, and we get an ADP pick. I think that's kind of boring, but it does make sense here at pick 32. I don't think it's going to be in question. I feel like Quinyon Mitchell has to be the guy. Yet at the same time, I'm not seeing him anywhere on here. Adonai Mitchell, Quinyon Mitchell. Okay, he's missing the top players, but he's going number 11 because they can't assign him to a certain team. I get you. He's going to so many teams that they can't just pick one. So we're going to be going with Quinyon Mitchell, but before I make that pick, I feel like the Panthers get left out. When we do these first round mock drafts, as someone who's a part-time Panthers fan, I've liked them for a while. They're right here. They're right here. Pick 33. They should be right here. I could have picked 2 rounds so that they could pick Panthers right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick them as well. Remember that Quinyon Mitchell was the Jacksonville Jaguars pick. They do need help. They just let Darius Williams walk, who was their number 1 corner last year. And they're going to be doing a slight reach. Makes a lot of sense because Keon Coleman, he's not the top guy on the board here, as we can see, and he's not going to be the top guy here. I think Keon Coleman might even be a late second-round pick on a lot of people's boards. 45 might be a big reach, if I'm being honest. Keon Coleman will be going to the Panthers, and we're picking Quinyon Mitchell to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And congratulations, everyone. This is going to be our final draft, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to make sense. It was a chaos draft. This is just absolute craziness. Seeing the 49ers trade up all the way to 6 to draft Laiatu Latu was an absolute reach. Broncos trading up to 7 to get Jaden Daniels. Drake May falling all the way to 5, and then the Vikings deciding that he's worthy of trading up. 4 is probably the craziest pick of it all, Joe Alt, trade up from the Jaguars to get rid of Josh Allen to then trade up to for it just doesn't make any sense from a lot of these teams. But hey, that's a chaos draft. And this has been the Fall Star Fantasy Podcast, brought to you by the FF Newsletter. I am Cameron Edgecombe. Follow me on Twitter at Cameron's Ego, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you.